Yo, I just got to chime in on on how protest movements and the political machine works. I mean, I'm just doing this as a reminder that just regular everyday. Let's go to a protest, or let's do a civil disobedience. That's cool, and it shows that there's some people out there. It shows them that they can't just do stuff without pissing people off. I mean, people are going to know what they're doing. Otherwise they would just do it. They would do things that are really bad if you didn't complain about the things that are just like not good. But anyway, we're talking about how marijuana in Michigan, we started trying to legalize marijuana in Michigan in the 60s. The movement really started in 1971, but I mean, you could argue that there was a lot going on in 1969, 1968. Let's just say it took 50 years of sustained civil disobedience campaigns where we had this thing called the Hash Bash in Ann Arbor every year for 50 years. We had every year some kind of a petition drive or grassroots effort to decriminalize in some city or another. Every year, lobby groups like NORML doing fundraising and doing high-profile things to try to get more awareness to the movement. And this is like, marijuana, legalizing marijuana, this is something that most of the people that we needed involved in this are people that normally just sit around and smoke weed all day and play video games or something. They're not political activists. They're not people that pay attention to politics or give a shit about it. They just knew that this was a big time injustice, and the only way you're going to change these kind of things is with massive movements. And a movement is not just some group or, a movement. The good thing about a movement that separates it from just a regular organization is that it can be organic. It can have different people in it. It doesn't have to be monolithic. What I mean by that is you don't get to do something like legalizing marijuana unless you have people from all sides of the political spectrum involved. You can't just be like, hey, we don't want to work with the right-wingers on legalizing marijuana because they're prohibitionists or whatever. That's silly. I mean, you can criticize people's political positions and even entire branches of the political bodies. You can pull one out and say that they weren't good at this or they didn't do the right thing on that, and that's cool, but you can't assume that everybody that votes for a Republican isn't going to help you with your cause or is against you just because you're not a Republican. That's just some bullshit you see on Twitter and Facebook and shit. That isn't the real world. When people say, oh, this is just Twitter, it ain't the real world, usually they're gaslighting you on something that actually is. Like the numbers. They don't want you to think that there's actually numbers out there no matter what you're trying to do. You know why? Because they know the numbers are there. There's definitely more of us than them. So don't get tied up and caught up in the whole idea that you can make political change by doing protests. That's not the case. A protest is a joke to these people anymore. It used to be something that the media cared about because, it started to look like, oh, this is your political position? How cringy. You're gross. And when it got to that point, the media would be like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to call this shit out because pretty soon we're gonna be gross if we don't. And that's the way marijuana legalization was. It kind of, that's part of that was there too. Like the level of disparity in treatment between white people and anybody that's not white in the drug war just started to look ridiculous, once the statistics started becoming, published widely. And that's what'll happen with any movement. But you have to do this for a long time, unfortunately, in America, because the politicians definitely don't want to change anything. They're where they are because of the donations, and the donations are coming because they're for or against something that is something that you probably want to change on, right? I mean, marijuana is one of the hardest ones, again, because every corporate interest that there is that gives money to politicians would like to see marijuana remain illegal for whatever reason or another. Every single one. Especially the biggest ones, like the military industrial, the big pharma, big oil. Anybody that sees hemp or marijuana as a threat to their industry would have opposed it and put money on lobby groups opposing it. But we got it done. And like I said, the politicians don't want this change, but neither do the people. And even people that grew weed during Prohibition didn't necessarily want too much to change, because it was just, you didn't have any idea of how you would come out of it on the other side. Especially, the growers and the people that sold weed on the street. We didn't know what was going to happen. Were they going to let us be a part of the new marijuana industry? I knew they weren't gonna, but I still fought for the change because it got rid of the felony for marijuana, which is the biggest deal that there is. Sure, we got fucked over by the corporations, and now we got to deal with this marijuana corporate takeover bullshit. But at least you can't get a felony for weed, right? As far as I know. And I'm just talking about Michigan. And like I said, I made a big old video about why I supported the coalition to legalize marijuana back when all that was happening. If you want to go back and watch that, that's cool. And what I said in that video was that, I laid out exactly why I didn't like the law and what was in it that was altered slightly, or actually, not from just the My Legalize to the coalition, but the coalition started with something and then they changed it. They made it so that you could stack licenses, so there was no limit. Essentially, if you have licenses, you can no limit the amount of plants you can grow or dispensaries you own or whatever. So I'm just, again, the Daily Dope Show is a channel about marijuana issues, but I'm about to change all that because I'm about more than that. And it's getting to the point where there's really no good story left in the marijuana legalization front because it's all bullshit. I mean, when I see something, I don't even get excited for Mississippi legalized this or decriminalized that in North Dakota. None of that shit even matters to me because I see that every time you look a little bit deeper into it, it's a bunch of half-measure bullshit, and they're still acting like smoking weed or possessing weed is some kind of bad thing. Like the most recent one was Louisiana with the decriminalizing a half ounce, and they're like, oh yeah, but you know what? If you get caught, we're still going to give you a fine, and it's a misdemeanor, but you can't get no jail time, but we'll still give you the fine. What the fuck do you give people fines if you catch them with a cigarette? I mean, what the fuck? It doesn't make sense. I don't even know if you can equate just drugs to these kind of things, but they don't legislate marijuana equally, if you know what I mean. They don't give you a fair assessment of what it really is. They rely on the propaganda being canon, so we don't get to challenge the propaganda, and we don't have to get. They don't like our facts and statistics. So, that's just how it is. And if you're doing any other political movement, no matter what it is, no matter what your cause is, you should look at how we did this in Michigan and learn a lesson. This took 50 years, and it started. One of the big catalysts of this movement in Michigan was when a man named John Sinclair got arrested for trying to hand a free joint to a federal agent on the steps of the Capitol in Lansing. They tried to give him 10 years for those 2 joints, and John Lennon came and saved him. But all bullshit aside, that's what kicked it off. All right. I think I'm done with this rant, but I just wanted tell people out there, don't give up on your cause. Join the greater movement for your cause, and stop being part of little organizations. And organizations are they're either already something that the government set up just to infiltrate some movement and, neuter it or kill it. Democratic Party is really good at that. Or, the organization is a target that will get taken out by the government because it's easy to find all the members and you can easily track everybody and know what the plans are and what they're doing. It's not a good idea. Organizing doesn't mean start an organization, get your tax papers, and that's stupid, man. You might as well just say that you might as well just pull up the surrender flag right away if you're going to join one of those. And don't believe in these groups or these political organizations or parties, because they are never going to try to do anything to change anything. And when you get change, it took us 50 years to legalize marijuana. Guess what you get? You get the watered down bullshit version of what you wanted in the first place. So always ask for way more than what you expect to get, or what you actually want or need to get. Ask for everything. Ask for the sky, and they might give you a hilltop. All right, guys, the Daily Dope Show checking out. Everybody have a good summer, because God knows they fucked us over on the last one. Peace.